bend the knee and join me. Together, we will leave the world a better place than we found it.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Nerdy Multiverse and yet another breakdown. Today, we will be breaking down and giving our initial thoughts on the third episode of the second season of House of the Dragon, the prequel series to Game of Thrones that takes place during a time known as the Dance of the Dragons from the books. This breakdown and the following ones as well will contain spoilery things from the source material. So this is your spoiler warning, you have been warned. And the third episode of this season is titled The Burning Mill. Before we get started with the episode, there are always two sides to a story, and there are two sides to this war. Team Green and Team Black. If you wish to choose your side and represent them until the very end, feel free to check out our merch made just for you to pick your side. The link is in the description below. Anyways though, the episode begins at the location that the title is referring to, as House Bracken knights accompany the land only to be met by members of House Blackwood. The feud between Houses Blackwood and Bracken is a tale as old as time. Really. It goes back to even before Aegon the Conqueror ventured to Westeros. The reason behind their rivalry has been lost over time. However, during the time of the First Men, both houses were kings but saw each other as illegitimate. Ever since then, they have even hated standing in the same room with a member of the opposing house. We actually saw a bit of this in season 1 of this series, when men and boys alike were brought forth to pledge why they should marry Rhaenyra, as Jerrel Bracken was killed in the middle of court by Willem Blackwood. Now, at this face-off here, there aren't any really notable members of either house. However, when the trailers came out, me and basically everybody else thought that the Blackwood member here would turn out to be Ben Blackwood, also known as Bloody Ben. But it turns out that this is a character just known as Davos Blackwood. However, I really do hope we get to see Bloody Ben eventually. House Blackwood has declared for Rhaenyra and writes off Aegon as a false king, while House Bracken has declared for Aegon, labeling Rhaenyra as a pretender. And this face-off here leads into the first large-scale battle of the war. This battle would be known as the Battle of the Burning Mill, also aligning with the title of the episode. Like I said last week, the casualties of this conflict are truly rising, and that reflects into the next scene, as Rhaenyra honors and buries both of the Cargill twins together, even after everyone around her scolds Eric with an A for trying to assassinate her, which is where Rhaenys suggests that new blood is at play, as Otto Hightower would never send for an assassination. And of course, this new blood is Criston Cole. Rhaenys suggests that Rhaenyra go to Alicent directly, as they both have a dedication to ending this peacefully, referencing their last meeting together. We cut to King's Landing as Sir Criston Cole is called into a meeting with the High Council. Of course, he is appointed as the new hand to the king, and instead of the usual pin bearing on his chest, we can see that Criston has a sort of chain of hands going around his armor. We can also see here in King's Landing the new banners being set up and the Targaryen guards and soldiers here in new attire. Instead of the usual black and red, they now don a green banner with a golden dragon. This was done by Aegon, and the green represents the Hightowers, of course, and the golden dragon representing Aegon's dragon, Sunfire. At the High Council meeting, everyone around Aegon seems very anxious and ready to start marching against Rhaenyra, as he toys around with the Valyrian steel dagger. Aemond also sits amongst the council once more, and this talk of war brings up a few of the Green's assets, such as House Rosby, Jason Lannister, Tywin Lannister's brother, who is raising an army in Casterly Rock, of course being the castle to the Lannisters, as well as Aegon and Aemond's brother, Daemon Targaryen. and his dragon that is almost of fighting age, Tessarion. Their victory depends on the Riverlands, as there are thousands of men there that have yet to declare to either side of the war. So Criston plans to ride out with his most trusted men to turn those houses to their side and not Rhaenyra's. Now at Dragonstone, as Rhaenyra meets with Mysaria once again, as she explains why she decided to stay. Rhaenyra let her go and provided her that honor of being free, but Mysaria wishes to work with Rhaenyra and Team Black, especially because the Hightowers went after her. She wishes to have a seat on Rhaenyra's council. This is also in the book, as Mysaria is appointed as Rhaenyra's Master of Whispers. Mysaria, of course, has a great knowledge of King's Landing, the Red Keep, and everybody that resides within it. So having her as your Master of Whispers is a perfect pick. While these two speak, we can see Sea Smoke flying and seemingly crying in the background. Sea Smoke is the former dragon of Laenor Velaryon's, and these actions from Sea Smoke could be a sign of his mourning, possibly pointing towards the fact that Laenor may be dead, leaving Sea Smoke lonely. Mysaria mentions this, and this is a hint towards Sea Smoke bonding with somebody new. After this, Rhaenyra then meets with Rhaena. Rhaenyra wishes to send Joffrey as a reward to Lady Jane Arryn in the Vale, who has pledged her loyalty and her army for a dragon. Rhaenyra also wishes to send Rhaena to Prince Reggio or hideout in Pentos, even further from the conflict. She wishes to send her 2 children with Rhaena as well in case everything here goes bad. Rhaena is rather hesitant with this, as she wishes to play a larger role in this conflict just as her sister Baela is. But Rhaena does not possess a dragon of her own, at least not for now, and Rhaenyra is giving her what is realistically one of the most important roles ever: the protection of their future. During their talk, the two do mention 2 other dragons, known as Stormcloud and Tyraxes. Stormcloud goes on to be ridden by Aegon III, and Tyraxes belongs to Joffrey, 2 of Rhaenyra's children. We then see Daemon bearing his dragon armor, riding atop of his dragon, Caraxes, arriving at Harrenhal to claim it for Rhaenyra and her army. We can still see the destruction of this old castle that was caused by Aegon the Conqueror many years ago, after Heir the Black refused to bend the knee. In the book, this event actually takes place much earlier on. Daemon was actually already at Harrenhal at the time of Luke's death. The people at Harrenhal do not put up a fight whatsoever, and as Daemon enters, Lord Simon Strong bends the knee and pledges his loyalty to Rhaenyra. And as he does so, a character known as Alice Rivers walks in and stares down Daemon. She plays a major role in the book as well as this episode later on. They all sit down for a meal, and Daemon wishes to begin repairing Harrenhal so that it can house the forces that Rhaenyra is building up. Harrenhal is the largest castle in Westeros and is able to hold 40,000 men. They bring up Grover Tully and how his soldiers do what they please as the man has grown so old. Daemon wishes to build their forces up and eventually then march on King's Landing. Something we can also take note of here is he makes Simon Strong refer to him as Your Grace. We then head back to King's Landing as Criston prepares to ride out with his men. Alicent introduces him to her brother, Sir Gwaine Hightower, who will also be joining Criston now. An increase in roles significantly, compared to that in the book, at least for now. Gwaine Hightower was only mentioned briefly in the book, and it seems he may be more of a recurring character in the show. And before leaving, Criston requests for Alicent's favor. Criston and his men are going out more as a scouting party for a larger force that is also marching out. We then see Rhaenyra meet with her council, who are also rather keen on acting swiftly. We then see Rhaenyra meet with her council, who are also rather keen on acting swiftly as the war closes in. She is hesitant on attacking King's Landing and even more hesitant on battling this war with dragons. Her council wishes for her to go into hiding while they plan out the war, in which she declines. Once again, we do see how certain members of her council question her so often. Rhaenys speaks up and mentions how Rhaenyra wears the crown of Jaehaerys Targaryen, who reigned in an era of peace that lasted longer than any predecessor of his, including that of Aegon the Conqueror, heading to Corlys's ship that they continue repairing. Here, Corlys and Rhaenys speak with one another about the succession over Driftmark. Rhaenys wishes for Rhaena to be named heir, even though she has no knowledge of ships or even dragons. However, Corlys wishes to impose Joffrey as heir instead. Now, in the book, neither of the two actually become heir to Driftmark, cutting back to Dragonstone as Baela is prepared to depart with Rhaenyra's children by her side. Here, she learns that her role is much more important than she first thought, as she is also to watch over dragon eggs, further securing their future. Now, if you look at these dragon eggs, 3 of which look an awful lot like Daenerys' eggs, and it was confirmed that they are in fact hers. At least 3 of them are. We then see Helaena, who seems to be doing a lot better than expected, as in the book she fell into despair and never really got over the death of her son, Jaehaerys. Here, she actually forgives Alicent. Now, this could be for everything that Alicent has indirectly caused, or this could be Helaena forgiving her for something else to happen down the road, as Helaena does continuously seem to be portrayed as a dreamer. Someone who is able to see that of future events. We see Aegon next as he prepares to ride out into battle himself with his dragon Sunfire. When Aegon was crowned with the Conqueror's crown, he was also gifted his sword, Blackfire, and he now also wears the Conqueror's armor. An armor set that is said to be made up of entirely Valyrian steel. Larys Strong ends up convincing Aegon to not ride out by spinning some lies and rumors that Alicent and Aemond will take over and rule when he leaves. And he is eventually appointed as Aegon's Master of Whispers, just like the book. We then meet the character known as Ulf White. In the book, just like Hugh Hammer, he is also a dragon seed and fights in the war, eventually also becoming a dragon rider. He claims to be a Targaryen bastard, specifically a descendant to Balon the Brave. Now, it's really unclear here if this is a big change from the book, or if he is just lying here to gain respect, either of which are likely. Aegon then arrives and eventually runs into Aemond at the brothel, and just like he did when they were younger, Aegon makes fun of Aemond. Aemond pretends like he doesn't care and walks off, but you can clearly tell that it bothers him and likely has all of these years. Back with Rhaenyra as she looks over her children's toys as they are now gone. She packs them away and finds Alicent's letter that she has yet to open. So she decides to sit down and finally read it. Sir Criston and Sir Gawain are caught in the middle of an open field by Baela and her dragon Moondancer. I really like the design they went with for Moondancer in live action. Small, but very fast. As I mentioned last week, Moondancer in the book was described as no larger than that of a warhorse. Back with Rhaenyra and her council as they urge for action to be taken as Baela reports her sighting of Criston and his scouting party. They mention Rook's Rest and wanting to head there to fortify its lands. Rook's Rest is a rather pivotal location in the book, and there are going to be some pretty big battles taking place here. Now at Harrenhal with Daemon once more as he is caught within a dream or a hallucination of sorts that is inflicted by Alice Rivers. He ends up walking into a room and finding Millie Alcock's younger Rhaenyra sitting down and tending to the body of Jaehaerys. She scolds him for coming and going constantly and leaving Rhaenyra to pick the pieces up. reflecting on how he caused a child's death, and now Rhaenyra is the one being blamed for it. He then flashes into a new area as Alicent stands in front of him and tells him that he is going to die in this place. The battle above God's eye is really being hinted at here. Now I obviously do not want to dive too deep into that battle, but it is absolutely legendary. Like I said before, Alice Rivers in the book plays a pretty pivotal role, and she is described to be one that dabbles in potions and witch-like activities. Rhaenyra meets with Mysaria as she seeks passage to King's Landing so that she can meet with Alicent, in which she does as she is snuck into King's Landing and the Church of the Seven. In the book, a meeting between the two is never described to have taken place, but here in the show it does. And honestly, I really do like this addition though, as the two were close when they were younger and they both realistically seek peace over war. Alicent brings up Viserys changing his mind and speaking of Aegon's prophecy. However, she has no knowledge of what Viserys was actually speaking of, as he was speaking of the Song of Ice and Fire. Rhaenyra tells her the truth behind the story and says it is in reference to Aegon the Conqueror, not Aegon, Alicent's son. But the truth is, it is not in reference to either of them. As we see in Game of Thrones, the prophecy plays out, as Jon Snow was revealed to be a Targaryen himself and also named Aegon Targaryen. Although, there are some people that actually argue it is Daenerys Targaryen that is the prince that was promised. But take that as you will. Alicent swears that there was no mistake in her understanding of Viserys, even though she is stuttering, clearly realizing that she was wrong. She ends up walking off and leaving Rhaenyra to reflect on this meeting, which is where this episode ends off. Overall, another great episode in my opinion, and the amount of Easter eggs and hints to the future events was an amazing touch. I do see people saying that this episode was boring or disappointing, but I personally enjoyed it and thought I do see people saying that this episode was boring, but personally I did enjoy it and thought it expanded on the relationships and characterization that these characters are going through. Personally, I did enjoy this episode as well, and I believe I would give it an 8 out of 10. And I cannot wait for next week's episode. But yeah, that about does it for this episode, from me at least, but of course, I would like to hear your thoughts on the episode as well. So make sure to leave them down below. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed our breakdown and review on this episode, don't forget to give it a like, and with that being said, we will see you all the next time that we go through and explore the nerdy multiverse.